With the news currently focusing on the horrifying birth defects caused by the Zika virus, it makes the rest of us ever more thankful for being born without such complications. But others aren't so fortunate, such as those born with giant limbs, those born with extra ones, and people whose lives have been tragically cut short by various other genetic or man-made defects. This is our list of the 7 most shocking human disfigurements. Number 7. Local gigantism. Gigantism is a hormone-driven condition which causes excessive growth throughout the body, and famous sufferers include the world's tallest man Robert Wadlow, former WBA heavyweight champion Nikolai Valuev, and wrestler Andre the Giant. But with local gigantism, the growth is restricted only to one or more areas, causing sufferers to develop enlarged versions of basically any body part. And yes, we do mean any. With local gigantism, it's often an accumulation of fluid to blame caused by lymphatic abnormalities. And it was this which caused the testicles of one Wesley Warren Jr. to grow to the weight of 134 pounds. Things got so bad for him he had to rest his testicles on a milk crate every few steps he walked. But eventually, Dr. Joel Gelman of the University of California came to his aid and performed surgery. Sadly, Warren Jr. died from diabetes 12 months later. But at least he got to spend 1 year of his life without anyone sarcastically telling him to grow a pair. Number 6. Mermaid syndrome. Cyrinomyelia is a rare congenital deformity which causes a child's legs to fuse together resembling a mermaid's tail. Medical science cannot tell us the cause of this shocking deformity, and sadly, it's often fatal due to the associated kidney and bladder complications. But whilst most sufferers don't survive long after birth, Tiffany Yorks managed to live a pretty active lifestyle with the condition for 27 years until her tragic death earlier this year. Tiffany did manage a few years, at least cosmetically, to cope with the abnormality, having complicated surgery, although still requiring a wheelchair and crutches to get around. But at least the procedure gave her some freedom from this debilitating condition in her remaining years. Number 5. The birth of a goddess. Lakshmi is the Hindu goddess of wealth, fortune, and prosperity, depicted as having 4 arms. So imagine you're an Indian woman who gives birth to a child with 4 arms and 4 legs to boot. You'd probably avoid making any references to one of your religion's most venerated deities just to help the kid out at school, right? Well, apparently not, because they named her Lakshmi. But she weren't no god. Whilst developing in the womb, she fused with her own parasitic twin, and was thus born with double the normal amount of shoes and mitten requirements. At first, Lakshmi was worshipped by religious fanatics who claimed she truly was a goddess. But this turned to mockery, as she was then dubbed the human octopus. And a circus even offered to buy the poor girl for display in a freak show. Thankfully, Lakshmi avoided a carny's life, and after several operations, her limbs were removed, and she's well on her way to becoming a normal little girl. Albeit one who can't juggle as well as she used to. Conversely, another sufferer, Randy Santos, has lived for 69 years with 2 extra arms, an extra leg, and an extra set of nipples. He earned $2,000 a night at the circus thanks to his condition, and women reportedly lined up to make love to him. Rudy has rejected surgery as he claims he's quite fond of his growths. Yeah, Rudy, I bet you are. At 4. Hypertrichosis. Also called Ambras syndrome. Hypertrichosis is a hormone-based condition which causes huge amounts of hair to grow all over the body. Long thought to be the source of many ancient werewolf myths, those with the condition are usually born covered from head to toe in hair. And unless you fancy a full body waxing every morning, this is a condition sufferers must learn to live with. The most famous hypertrichosis sufferers are Julia Pastrana, who traveled the US as part of a freak show, and 16-year-old Supatra Sasupan, who was named the world's hairiest girl by the Guinness Book of Records. Most people wouldn't want such a title, but Supatra completely owned her hairiness and said it even made her more popular at school. Number 3. The Tree Man. Earlier this year, 42-year-old Didi Koswara of Indonesia, also known as the Tree Man, sadly passed away after a lifelong battle with his illness. Koswara suffered from Lewandowski-Lutz dysplasia, a disease which causes huge bark-like warts to grow uncontrollably all over the body. Some surgeries were performed to remove the warts, but they almost always grew back. And whilst it did give him some brief respite, allowing him to feed himself and play Sudoku, Mr. Koswara needed twice yearly operations to keep the 13 pounds of growths on his hands and feet at bay. He died from complications involving hepatitis, liver, and gastric disorders in February this year and is survived by his 2 children. In at 2, tummy troubles. Sanju Bhagat never had a sweet, rippling six-pack, but nor was he so unhealthy he'd consider candy corn a vegetable, which made it a mystery as to why a man so lean would develop such a large, swollen belly. Sanju had always been self-conscious of his ever-growing gut, and people mocked him for resembling a pregnant man. But one day, Sanju found it more difficult than usual to breathe, and he collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital where doctors elected to operate, believing him to be suffering from a tumor. But when they cut open Sanju's belly, they found something else entirely, and one surgeon was quoted as saying, "To my surprise and horror, I could shake hands with somebody inside. First a limb came out, then another limb, then some genitalia followed by a jaw, more limbs, and a whole bunch of hair." Inside Sanju Bhagat's stomach was his half-formed twin, and it had leached his blood supply as a human parasite for the past 36 years. Fewer than 90 cases of this condition are found in medical literature, yet it's estimated to be present in 1 in 500,000 live births. So if you have a tummy that just won't go away no matter how much you exercise, then there's a slight chance it may not be entirely down to cheeseburgers. And number 1, the victims of Agent Orange. When the US dropped Agent Orange on jungles during the Vietnam War, they did so to both destroy crops and remove foliage for the Viet Cong to hide beneath. But was the government aware of the side effects this Monsanto-created chemical would have on both the Vietnamese and American soldiers? When Nguyen Min's parents were exposed to Agent Orange, and he was born with a severely elongated skull and bulging eyeballs, Min An is a Vietnamese orphan whose parents were also exposed, and he suffers from a condition which causes his skin to flake off and hang like fish scales. Other conditions including multiple finger growth, cleft palate, hydrocephalus, cancer, and mental disorders have been linked to the chemical's use in both Vietnamese children and those of US servicemen. And people wonder why Monsanto still has a bad rep these days. Just because Agent Orange sounds delicious doesn't mean you should get away with poisoning a society for decades after invading them. So those were the 7 most shocking human disfigurements. I wonder what new horrors we'll encounter after the effects of chemicals dropped on Iraq and Afghanistan are discovered. Maybe we should try to figure that out right now by watching our list of 7 secret superweapons that actually exist.